Hello. Welcome back. Today we are going to be talking about Mercury in all of the signs and for relationships and what that planet even means. And I am doing this video with
Ricardo Zivar. You can catch me on the Infinite Soul here with Willis Bloom, throwing you the Mercury video for astrology relations. Or whatever we're going to call it. Like
astrology interactions.
Interactions. Yeah.
And I think it's a great time because Mercury is just entering Gemini.
So it's retrograde in Gemini. Let's go.
So we're feeling the feels of that. And I am a Gemini, Virgo rising, which is both Mercury ruled signs. So I have a lot of personal experience with this. And yeah, you have your Mercury in Sag. So you experience some of the interesting sides of Mercury as well. So we're going to get all into it. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started.
Lots to go over. It is a Mercury retrograde video for another time, so we'll see how this video comes out. But to be real, because anything could happen. But to talk about Mercury, we're really going to get to one of the most fundamental parts of astrology in some places. Every sign might have their own kind of tone or rulership, malefic, benefic. What's beautiful about Mercury, though, is that it's completely, there's no polarity. It's neutral as it gets in my eyes. And when I think about Mercury, I think about the narrator, I think about communication, but I also sometimes can feel like, sometimes it's like the meter on the movie and your DVD ROM. It's almost kind of like, yep, we're at this, let's skip over 20 minutes and like see where we're at in the storyline of receiving and giving information. So lots I want to go over, but yeah, just kind of want to drop in there to begin it. So
yeah, that's one of the first things that comes to mind with Mercury is its dual nature. It represents not one side, it represents both sides. And so that inherently is kind of like not taking a side, right? It's the androgynous. It's the mix of both masculine and feminine, or neither. It is the messenger of the gods, so it takes its place on earth to share the messages, but it always is going back up to the gods and with the gods as well. And so it doesn't belong to the heavens or the earth. It belongs in the in-between. And that's why there's a specific chart, which I'm forgetting the name of it now, but it's like the chart that the Hellenistic astrologers used for like the kind of the basic chart of the universe or like the world, and each planet has its house that it like likes to be in and its position, and Mercury is kind of on the in-between. Like it doesn't necessarily have a specific place. And so I think that really describes the objective nature of the planet and makes it super fascinating because it is in charge of a lot of things that are really important to us. And yet it doesn't like to always take sides like the other planets.
So in ancient scripture, if you looked up, Mercury is the fastest planet in our solar system. And it would rule Hermes for the messenger god because it's about communication, predominantly in travel. But again, if you kind of use the analogy of Hermes can go up and down the poles of wherever life can go, Mercury takes suit on what is going on in its experience. So I always think of like, it's this camera lens pretty much on the perspective of what's happening right there. Sometimes the movie could be sad, happy, whatever it is. Mercury seems to take the focal point and just is a neutral planet. It's like an open lens that picks up where it's going to go. I think this Hermes Hephaestus, I'm going to butcher his name right now, gosh, but he was an ancient alchemist, and they would use Mercury as a film to do a lot of different practices because Mercury was the one to help kind of extract what was going to be displayed or communicated or interacted with this substance. So to bring it back to astrology terms, though, Mercury is like even depicted sometimes as in the heavens as one of the more holier planets I've seen to some old ancient scripture that would have Mercury in the middle, because it's literally through the entire eye of experience is where Mercury is your focal point for everything we experience. So relating this back to a relationship, we really can see that where your Mercury is beyond just how you're communicating, yes, how you take a picture, how you play a video game, however so. It is even functionally how one is experiencing, cognitively processing information into the reality. So it's quite mystifying when Mercury sits in a different sign, how this person is processing and obtaining information and the ways that you can communicate and interact with to better understand how people are cognitively being understood and how you can interact with them better in their way.
Yeah. And I mean, we all know the age-old saying that basically relationships are all about communication. And so even though you might have beautiful aspects between your moon and your rising and your sun, and you just get each other on a soul level, if you can't actually communicate about the ways that you understand each other, or communicate if there are disharmonies that arise in the relationship, we all know that that's where things really start to break down. So
100%.
The Mercury is that lens in which we are viewing the world. It's the way that we process and are affected by information, the way that we exchange and then share that information in our perspective. And so if it's always distorted and in conflict with the other person's way of viewing things, you can obviously see that that's a relationship that will struggle to get over the hurdles that will inevitably appear in life. And so I'm super excited to talk about it. And is there, what else would you like to say about it maybe before we jump into this?
I got more to say about Mercury maybe than any other planet next to Pluto. So Mercury's the glyph with the little antenna.
Yeah.
I really want people to get this because, and I know you're the Gemini, so I'm going to let you take that over. But when we leave from Earth and into air, Gemini, the third in the zodiac, where we reach a Mercury ruled sign, I literally can't think of Mercury more than a bumblebee. And I literally see a bumblebee and how flowers need insects or other forms of communication to communicate their seeds, to get their information around other areas. And bees, with the little antenna, scout out, find the colors, pick up the pollen, pick up that information, and they go somewhere else and they make honey. And so like literally everything in your life runs from a form of communication with Mercury. If we didn't have this principle, it's almost like everything would be absent from interacting with each other. So sometimes it can rule text messages, phone calls, emails. It can even just rule how someone kind of sometimes walks, their personality. Something in the way they are is communicating something that can even trigger a conversation to somebody else. So like it's like almost the permeating radio signal that someone's transmitting out in Morse code, if you will. So it's extremely important in relationships because, as Courtney was just saying, yes, we can have philosophies, energetics, play sports, and do all this, whatever it is that people connect with. But when the Mercury can be out of bounds, we literally are having two different styles on how we want to receive communication. And I want to jump into this, but I have this with my brother. He's got Mercury and Virgo. I got Mercury and Sag, we square. He wants to be all about the nitty details. I'm more about the philosophical being. And so if we don't have comprehension with this, we can have meltdowns in communication where we'll just be like, they don't understand me, they're not listening, or whatever it is, and that's not true. And some people, this can change with awareness, but some people that have just good trines, they just seem to flow in a certain way of communication depending on where the Mercury's placed. So lots to share, but just to kind of intro it, I think it could be very essential, if not extremely essential, to progressing in any form of relationship, to know how they're cognitively thinking, especially children.
Absolutely. And one of the most interesting things about Mercury is also kind of what you're touching on, this idea of like a neural network of all the interconnectedness of ideas. So what Mercury loves to do is it brings things together. That's why it rules transportation, communication, paperwork. It's getting things from A to B and connecting them in some fashion. And so essentially, it's not just about communicating something. It's actually also how our brain then takes that information and relates it to all these other different things. So for example, you with Mercury and Sagittarius might take information that you're receiving from your brother and relate it to larger philosophies of life, bigger concepts, things that are not so compacted or analytical in nature. And then his brother then takes that information and zooms into the details, looks at examples, picks things apart. And so their way of integrating and relating information takes them in completely different directions and creates a separation between these individuals when they might even agree on what they're talking about.
Right. To be honest, some squares, some situations in astrology, they don't necessarily need to be bad, but the awareness can help you understand. Yeah. This is where I like that your style is different than me. We can see more versus seeing only the same way. But without awareness, classically said, you know, you can have a breakdown in relationships with not aware on how this person's communicating. You're just, you know, so not everyone thinks and talks like you. And that's just something to think about. Mercury's not just like how I'm talking as much as like how you're receiving information watching this video right now and how you're processing it and compartmentalizing it. Mercury retrograde moment, damn it. But like how you're organizing your files basically on what your sensory is picking up and making sense of it, like processing on your computer is what makes the game. The CD has the information, but it's how the laser reads it is how you get the video, movie, or game, whatever it is, to really be experienced through the lens. So
I also want to talk about something slightly more technical. So if you're not fully comprehending it, that's okay. So Mercury is never more than 2 signs away from the sun. So wherever your sun is placed, your Mercury is going to be soon following it or in front of it. And essentially, there
are rare times that Mercury can oppose the sun. Sometimes. Very rare. It can happen.
We'll have to look at that.
We'll discuss this later.
We'll discuss that later in the comments down below. But essentially what I see very commonly in my practice and using this technique of traditional astrology is looking at when a planet is right next to the sun within a certain degree. So like within 8 degrees or so. That planet is considered combust, which means that it is blinded by the light of the sun. When in the sky, it actually becomes invisible because it's so close to the sun. And Mercury travels so close to the sun. So for many people, it is blinded by the sun. Mm-hmm. And I will say that I often see, especially if that Mercury is in a sign it doesn't like to be in or retrograde or all of those things, the houses that Mercury rules, which is going to be Gemini, like a house that's in Gemini or a house that's in Virgo, will often have these blind spots to them. So people may be like unaware of certain facets of that area of their life. So for example, if they have Gemini in the 7th house and Mercury is in Sagittarius, a sign it doesn't like to be in, combust the sun, retrograde, it might be that that person enters into relationships with the wrong people until they have to learn after many experiences kind of the patterns that they're falling into, because there can be a lack of awareness. So Mercury is our planet of understanding and awareness, but because it travels so close to the sun, for many of us it's combust, and it can give us these lack of awareness in those areas. It can also make us sometimes feel like during childhood we are not fully heard and understood. And I see this a lot with like parents just thinking that they get you or like writing you off and things of that nature that can be really frustrating. And then it can come across in conversations as an adult of, I need to talk a lot because no one listens to me, or I need to shut down because no one listens to me. I don't feel understood, so I get frustrated when I'm trying to explain myself. It can come across like that because of how we were treated as children. And so if you have some issues with your Mercury, like I mentioned, you might experience some of those things in your life.
Mm-hmm. Definitely need to rethink the situation I said with Mercury oppose the sun. I'm like, there's like all these technical things that were going on up in my head in synastry. I love what Courtney's bringing up because it's the tone of how that experience is going to be made through the sun. I have Mercury on Venus. I won't lie. I feel like I want to communicate things that are like beauty and philosophical.
So does Johnny Depp, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, in Gemini, I believe. I believe he is
Taurus. And so
Taurus. Yes.
super artistic. And I can see that in you too with your music.
I get really artistic, and I realize that like my brain wants to communicate what's around this situation. And, you know, that's one combo, and we're going to share here perhaps, but Mercury is taking the lens of your experience through what is around it too. So someone that has like Mercury on Saturn or something, we'll get into all this, but like it can have a very more serious tone. Now Mercury is being influenced within the lens of Saturn. And so the mind is really rigid, really serious, like potentially. It depends on where it's going to be sitting though. But the sign that it is can give a lot of power to what Mercury is going to look like, because it's going to be so connected to your experience. What kind of bumblebee are you, and what kind of flowers are you going to be connecting with will almost tone to where Mercury sits in the chart. So,
okay, we're going to jump into the signs now, but I just want to say super quickly that if you have Mercury in Virgo and Gemini, it is very strong in those signs because it's at home in those signs. And if you have it in Pisces or Sagittarius, it might struggle a little bit in those signs. It's
in detriment, and then which basically means that like the person is not in the territory it normally would thrive in.
It's like a foreign country and you're just trying to figure things out. So you have to work a little harder and do things in a little bit different way, but it has its own gifts. And we're going to get to that when we talk about each specific sign.
Excited. Let's go.
All right. Let's start off with Mercury in Aries.
Mercury in Aries.
So I was actually just doing the analysis of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, and you can check that out on my channel. And
love it. I'm excited.
Amber actually has Mercury in Aries, and I mean, when you listen to her recordings and things like that, you can really feel the fiery nature of Aries, because whenever you think about a sign and a planet in that sign, you have to think about the planet that rules that sign, and the nature of that is being kind of downloaded or imported into the planet Mercury. Mm-hmm. So the way you communicate can be fiery, can be passionate, can be aggressive, can be polarizing, especially if people like rub you the wrong way or don't agree. There can be like a rash or impulsive nature to what you say in an argument. Like it can just spill right out of you because of the kind of quick nature of Aries and Mars.
Mercury and Aries sometimes can be the hothead position, sometimes can be the captain of the ship position. Albert Einstein has Mercury in Aries. I don't think this is a weak Mercury at all, especially within the fire element. There's a directive nature and there's a logic. I've seen people with very great intelligence with this position. It also just needs to know that like it's sometimes like it can be a little bit selfish or needing the validation in how it's expressing itself. It can be very me talk sometimes. Just blunt and being Mercury with you. There's no this is not a bias. This is called hermetic. It's just, it is what it is, like don't take it personal. But like, with Mercury and Aries in that way, like, I've seen a lot of directiveness, a lot of action, a lot of I ams. And once they can recognize there's pluses and minuses here, but I think it really helps you empower and charter your way on defining who you are. Something about it, though, like also lets you get real clarity, real jump in. Nope, this is what we're doing and move forward. And so like it's a lot of direct communication is very effective.
Yes.
There's a tendency to have like outbursts potentially and not having to regulate Mercury and Aries. And especially where I know someone with Mercury and Aries, like a stellium and Aries with it on Saturn, this person's super disciplined. They take their practice and what they do so much to heart. But in Aries, it's about them. It's for them. They need to feel empowered. They need to be heard. And, yeah.
I love that. I like your explanation of them being very direct, very decisive, blunt, and this always has both good and bad. So on one hand, it makes them very forthright, and so you know where you stand with these individuals. They are not tiptoeing. They are not being passive aggressive. They will address things with you, even if they have their sun in Libra or in Pisces, and they tend to kind of want to avoid conflict. They are definitely going to air things out with you in a clearer way. And so I think it's one way to have healthy relationships, But the downfall is sometimes there can be not enough of a filter or thinking enough, I guess, about how saying that thing in that moment can impact someone emotionally. And so there's always going to be that line that the person has to learn, and it's going to depend on their level of consciousness, how they utilize the energy. And so, for example, I don't know Albert Einstein personally at all, but he's obviously channeling this into like making decisions really quickly and pivoting really quickly. He's had all these experiments and he's doing so many different things, and he's able to achieve so much because he's moving at that rate and he's not afraid to fail. He's going head on into things. And I'm not sure how that affected his personal relationships, but in terms of work, like that's really served him well. And so it kind of just depends on how each person's utilizing the energy of that planet.
There's one last little detail that really came up that I really feel I need to share this. Aries needs authenticity. Something about the fire of Aries is knowing who you are, loves authenticity. When something's true and showing up just as it is, there's something that like Aries has deep respect for. That person is in their power, they are defined. And that is a way to really, I think it would rub children in a very positive way, would be very admirable for people in such a light. And so this is a really good way to have those communications. So even if something like Pisces or Libra, maybe more a softer tone, you coming up with authentic honesty is something where Aries might honor and respect that form of communication. So I just felt like I should add that to the mix. It's not just directive. They're a man or woman on a mission. You just want to make sure that there's not high traffic, because then they get
Yes.
So, yeah.
And all right, so Mercury in Taurus. So this is the one that this is the Mercury that Johnny Depp has. So we can see already this point of contention. These are signs right next to each other for Amber Heard and Johnny Depp. So there is a level of not fully understanding the other. Like they kind of embody what the other person lacks, but that doesn't always translate well in relationships that can be difficult. So Mercury in Taurus is going to take things slow, right? It's going to be less reactive. It's going to be, I think, more thoughtful with its words. And you can hear this at the trial. Oh my God, Johnny Depp talks so slowly. I'm just like, I literally am putting all of his videos talking on ×2, and it's barely at the pace that I can manage. Like,
and he's a Gemini.
So it's just, yeah. So it's deliberate, I would say, with everything that it's deciding. It's really thinking things through, whereas Mercury and Aries can be, like I said, super decisive. It can analyze things like in an instant. Mercury in Taurus, I think, really takes things at a snail's pace to figure out if that's truly what's going on.
I will say that now Mercury in Taurus enters the sign of Venus, the ruler of Venus. It moves slower. And for sure, sometimes it's simpler. I think I remember so simple America could say it or something. There was a quote basically that like, we simplify it to be spoken to the people. And this can be quite effective because Taurus kind of cuts out all the fat and just says what it needs to be. Sometimes though, as it's processing and taking a longer time to synthesize things though, it can get muddled up with like all these other flavors of what's really going on. So it might just pick what stuck with it as a feeling experience sometimes. And I think sometimes Mercury and Taurus needs to like be taught a little slower, at the same time make it stimulating. Like, you know, I've seen people get bored because they weren't like emotionally stimulated or something, and they're not really focused on a situation. But like I've always seen people somewhere related to massage or food or something that calms them down. It's just making sure that you can kind of keep them in their humanness on the same page if you're in forms of communication. So there's so much more I want to say, but for time's sake.
Okay. I think the other thing that I would say with Mercury and Taurus is the thing that's typical with Taurus, which is being a little bit more stubborn. So while they're slower to decide things, they might be also slower to relinquish that opinion, that thought, that idea. And that could also be one of the reasons why we see, even towards the end, you know, Amber would call Johnny Depp on the phone and be like, my reputation, what's going on? Like, everyone's going to think these things. And Johnny Depp was still telling her, let's just put out a statement. Like, let's just, like, let this, you know, let's let this go, essentially. Let's cover this up in some type of way. He's still trying to protect her, even though the relationship had turned toxic long ago. And I think that conversation is such a great example of, you know, the Mercury in Aries, which is very concerned with its well-being, and then the Mercury in Taurus, which is like not letting go of this idea that I'm still this person's partner, I'm still this person's protector, even though that had been long gone, essentially.
Courtney just stepped out for a little bathroom break. We're gonna keep the show going. So Mercury and Taurus, I've had a lot of dear people, and you're probably out there watching this with Mercury and Taurus, and there's something that they want to simplify how life is. There's some just standards at having a good life. We're going to go on a date. We're going to eat food. We're going to hook up, and it's going to be great. Like, it's like a simplistic form. It's not trying to overcomplicate things. And there's like a route to how we want to just go feel good and prosper and have a good time. In the sign of the bull, you know, it's really like, what can we build and where can we begin? And so there's a simplistic form that wants to come on this. Speaking slow and really constructively can really help Mercury and Taurus understand. And so sometimes it takes a little bit more time for them to comprehend a subject or a matter. And Courtney did drop on something. You can be quite stubborn. There are old ideologies or old ways of being that you probably don't want to change. And to advance or be more versatile is my loving advice. Sometimes because we can pick something in Taurus, say it's everything, and hang on to it and never change our mind. And even if the sake of changing our mind might be necessary, we want to make sure that we can be open to new ideas and adventure out a little bit. But this is a great position for like communicating something, building wealth easily in a way that allows you to have a stability and a faction in your life. We're not overcomplicating it here. We're just kind of sticking to some core feelings, core words, core way of lifestyle. And like, we're just kind of cutting the fat and just getting right into the meat and potatoes there. So I will intro, but Courtney's the Gemini here, so I want to make sure that she gets to speak on this, and she'll be right back. She told me to keep going. Mercury and Gemini. So we have the ruler of the planet Mercury in the sign of Gemini. We would say Virgo too, but I also see that something about Gemini has more of that Hermes personality. These people are witty. These people are clever. They might also, depending on the position, have moved a lot around in their lifestyle. And depending on where the sun is, it can change up how one communicates with their hands. Sometimes it's an acting position. Sometimes it's a journalist position. But this is someone that's really interested in the facts. This is a Mercury that's like, where's the aisle? What's the book? What's the chapter? Is the article 2? I need to know that because that information is truth. That is fact. It's a good lawyer position to some extent. These are people that like the very book smart information is needed to really come back and show us what is really going on. I would find that these people really appreciate proper communication, but more than that is also being able to be communicative and interacted with and stimulated. It's a fast-moving interaction, fast-moving nervous system. I can feel like people like this can get a little bored easily and want to just change it up, if you will. So Mercury and Gemini, like, to be honest, and we'll let Courtney get settled here, you know, this is a very clever pack. I know some Geminis with this position, and writing is so sincere to them. Journaling, diary, the way that they communicate in with the world, and there's so many ideas and so many things that come in. And one thing I notice about Mercury and Gemini is I want to talk to you about it. I want to understand, and I want to, like, I really am with the moment. Sometimes it can be the more trendier people. Sometimes they pick up things and they put them on them. Like, you know, like, oh, I like that. I'm gonna go with that. Like, you know, I like that word. Let's roll with that. And so, but there's something about being trendy, versatile, and witty. Gosh, what's her name? She was the most Gemini woman ever. And she went skydiving at like 80 years old. Rita Davenport? No, that's not her name. Joan Rivers. Boom. Joan Rivers. She's the most Gemini woman ever. She had Mercury conjunct Venus at 29 Gemini. She's wild. She's a comedian. Look, she said, what did she say? I say the things that everyone's thinking but won't say. She's hilarious because she's making analogies to like revealing the truth on how really things are. And she just says it. She don't care. It's not an emotional position, but it's funny because like, oh, shit, that's a truth bomb. You know, it's just what it is. And so it's not that they're insensitive. They're just kind of like saying like, come on, like that's the truth right there. And if you can't face that, there's other things we got to address, basically. Just touching on Mercury and Gemini. Thanks for joining us back.
Yeah. Mercury and Gemini is, I think the word is for sure objective. Like they can just, I feel like they can see things extremely clearly. I mean, it's functioning so well in this sign. And that it does have its downfalls with the squirrel mind. It's very distracted. It loves a lot of stimulation. But then it can also handle a lot of stimulation. This is the mind that can multitask. This is somebody who might even be able to work multiple jobs depending on the rest of their chart.
Technical details sometimes.
Especially Mercury and Virgo would be like really good with technical details, but even Mercury and Gemini as well. And I feel like the biggest thing about Gemini would be the curiosity. So these are individuals who have an open mind, and I don't know what you've already said, so I hope we didn't already say this, but
We'll touch on it.
So just like the open-mindedness of these people, they are like sponges, which allows them to be objective because they are willing to take in everybody's perspective. And so in terms of a relationship, I think that it could be really great to have a partner with Mercury and Gemini because even if you kind of struggle with communication, they can make up for where you might have trouble expressing yourself. They might even be able to help you express yourself. It could be frustrating, like Mercury and Aries, Mercury and Gemini. They could get frustrated with the slower earth signs because they don't process information as quickly. So that could lead to maybe instability in conversations. But in general, they have such a good perspective of kind of what is going on that I think it would help suffice for any like lacking in the foundations of others' communication, essentially. And they can make other people feel really comfortable. Like maybe you don't express yourself as easily as me, not saying me, but just like in general, like a Mercury and Gemini. But I can bring it out of you. You know, I can ask you questions. I can help reflect back what you mean to say. I can do my best to understand you. And then it's like the communication just flows, even if that person doesn't normally communicate that well with other people. It's like the Mercury and Gemini individual can entice it out of you, and it makes it just a lot easier to connect with them.
There's something about interacting with the environment that really gives the Mercury and Gemini. And once you understand this rulership, you can kind of really get how Mercury works. I also joke it's got a little bit of a jester position. These people are silly, they're witty, they're funny. Like this is probably the child that's going to come back with new words it learned at school very fast, and maybe even pick up. I like the way that person did their hair, and that person does that because Mercury and Gemini is like, I'm learning from the environment. I'm very curious, and like, how does that work? But I've seen beyond all, and I'm Mercury and Sag, so we'll get into this. The antithesis, Mercury and Gemini, is almost like, I really want to talk about things. I really want to understand. I really want to interact and come to new details and new information to have more awareness. It's like a bookworm junkie to some level in form of its immediate environment. So
yeah, they never want to stop learning. And I think the best part about it is it's so Mercury in nature that it doesn't take things personally. When it gets new information, it can see the different perspective. It doesn't try to hold on to its old perspective. It doesn't try to deny it because its emotions say otherwise. It sees the facts and is like, okay, and it just pivots. And it's just literally just collecting data and using that as a determiner of what's right, what's wrong, what's going on. And so it makes the conversations pretty easy with them because they're not going to be on the offense trying to defend what they believe at all times.
I think we need to move on, and we're going to take a Mercury speed up here. But I will say that sometimes Mercury and Gemini might still actually be, I want to say they can actually be a little snarky or something because they have like other information. Well, hey, you're saying this, but there's also this facts. There's also this details. Are you looking at everything? And like, you got to comprehend that with Mercury and Gemini. You're never going to be able to grasp where they're going. So the best thing is to stating where your emotions and your perspective and where you're at. And they might be very aware of how you're sharing, as Courtney's saying. Yeah.
So. They can be argumentative, like, but it's not personal. I think that's a difference between this and maybe like a fire sign or a water sign, which can get a little fired up a little bit.
We're making an intro video, but I actually want to make another video to actually discuss these things, because talking about Mercury's with interactions with people go for hours. I'm like, well, maybe not, like, and the people we've met and the things, the alignments and all that. So, yeah.
All right, let's talk about Mercury in Cancer, which I have this, so let me definitely
go for it.
Go for this one, which I would actually really love to hear what Ricky has to say, because, you know, when you have something, it's almost like too close that you can't fully see yourself. So, okay, so how I personally feel my Mercury in Cancer comes about is I think that I'm always thinking of in terms of emotions. I'm a very intuitive thinker, so I definitely go with like my gut feeling on things. Even though I am extremely analytical, the emotional aspect of things surpasses the analytical side of myself. Or they work in combination together. My intuition feels this, and then I'm sorting through the logic to see how that may align with my feelings. I think that I care really deeply about how what I'm saying affects people. I care about having conversations that like open people up and show like their true nature and show their emotional side. Like I feel most connected with people when they are showing kind of like their soft underbelly, which is super Cancer in nature. And so that's part of how I operate. Yeah.
For Mercury in Cancer, we're now getting Mercury to rule in the sign of the moon. So it's not just a water sign. We're talking about now logic has moved into the emotional body on such a level. I find in a lot what Courtney's saying is like I've had someone say this, and not necessarily with Mercury in Cancer, but like if they feel something is bad, they just don't do it. They don't need to logically process, was that good? Was that bad? It's like, no, that's bad. This is good. I just intuitively know it emotionally. But something with the moon, there's always going to be a theme in the story of one's life to be really connected to one's homeland, family. There's something that radiates from the family that helps one understand their autonomy on how to feel comfortable in their surroundings. So some of this can be a coping situation. It could also just be how they feel more connected to their environment. Like, how can I be a family member and feel the family of people around me? Well, I have a really good friend with Mercury in Cancer, and like there's a lot of sentimental emotions. And even if it's in the first house or somewhere like more direct of a position, what am I doing to feel more at home with my environment is what this Mercury is trying to understand. It's picking up information in the pond that's helping you really be able to feel more cooperative and more aware in your environment. And it's funny, like the people they find or attract themselves to usually has something that calls them back from home. It's so interesting. And I have a friend, and I just thought I met someone that was close to me, and we're good friends. And I thought this guy should be friends with him. And something intuitively strange and bizarre, Mercury in Cancer will like kind of like emotionally attract that person in. And so just knowing that they are amazing listeners. They are amazing listeners on an emotional and limbic level. They're feeling you as a human, like, you know, as you're talking. These are points where like the emotional musical notes maybe speaking can be even more reactive to this Mercury. And so like, you know, being understood, being comforted, being like it's where like my favorite food is chicken noodle soup and I'm sick and you got me the chicken noodle soup exactly how I wanted. It emotionally told me, gosh, you care so much. Like, you know, it hits, I love that. Hits hard. So,
yeah. And I think because there is that emotional awareness there, I mean, at least for me personally, there's a sensitivity. I can absolutely take things personally. I have a hard time, while I can be analytical, I have a hard time not seeing things through my emotions as well. And so there is part of me that can detach a little bit because I am quite analytical, but at the end of the day, I'm always thinking about how I feel, how other people feel, how what is said is making all of us and changing the dynamic between us. And it's just, yeah, it can be a place in which there can be, you know, if there's a fight or something, I don't know, it's definitely, they're gonna take things personally a little bit more. Like, I cannot handle people saying mean things to me and just like have it roll right off my shoulders. Like, I will think about that for a month after. I will hear that person's voice in my head. I will know if I affected someone negatively and it will hurt me. Or, you know, vice versa. If they say something that's mean to me, it's like these are people who do not take things lightly because they understand the impact of things. And so because of that, they can become overly sensitive, which is the negative side of this as well.
Really need to nurture how their environment is, and it can change everything for how they process information. Some people live in emotional stories, and this Mercury, it could almost, I won't lie, I would even want to study even more just of how interwoven emotions are creating the perspective on how we're experiencing life. But the moment that I can say, like, they really take care of their environment, they're here to listen, they're here to nurture, sit down by the fire, put up your shoes, tell me how it is, you know, very in that place. Here's my favorite blanket, you know, and like, and I use that, but like, even to someone that could be a tough brute guy, you know, would still want to, like, here you are as a person, as a man, as a woman, talk about life in much more of a comforting, understanding mode, that we can unplug from life and really get to understand each other. This is how this Mercury can be really heard in some ways.
I resonate with that. All right, let's talk about Mercury and Leo. And since you're familiar with the Leo energy as Leo rising, do you want to take it away?
Oh, Mercury and Leo. I have a really good friend. She has Mercury and Leo, and I'm not going to name her, but you need to be performing. Everything in the way you talk is a show. And don't take that as a good or bad. It's neither. It's actually just the sun wants to pour out of you. And this is where the sun's ruler is now here with Mercury's, almost in doing a sonnet. It's like, I have a message for you, and it's a song instead of a letter. You know, it's how you express inside of yourself that is something that's going to actually radiate with usually extreme positivity. Depending on the individual, there is a little bit of dramaticism for sure. I will say though, Mercury in Leo though, you know, they're definitely wanting to know on how this can pertain to themselves in their life. I won't lie. Sometimes you can get in your head and over analyze yourself too much. If like there's some anxiety sometimes because it's over, if you maybe there's certain positions where like Mercury and Leo is thinking about itself too much, be able to understand and perspective how other people are perceiving you. But this makes you unanimous, a joy of a party. Everyone loves to see you. If you can work on like knowing that your smile lights other people up, Mercury and Leo takes you far, you know.
I love that. Yeah, I feel like when Mercury is strong and activated in such a social sign like Leo, it's like the sun and Mercury both have a really great way of kind of being the life of the party. There's so much expression and externalization from these planets. And so when you have something like this, even if you have other parts of your chart that are shy, maybe you won't have a million friends, but with your Mercury and Leo, you know how to like say things in a way that get people really excited, get people fired up. Maybe you can get them like stoked to go on a trip with you or stoked to have a party. And you can be like the life of the party. So your energy, like the way that you talk generates energy. It generates life force. And these people are going to be often very creative. They might be storytellers in nature. They might feel sort of like Mercury and Gemini, quite childlike and playful in nature as well. And I feel like these individuals are going to enjoy those kinds of topics. So maybe they enjoy talking to kids, or maybe they enjoy like writing stories or doing arts and things of this nature, or performing, like you're saying, absolutely performing. There is that dramaticism that, even if the rest of the chart is really undertoned, can come out in really fun and expressive ways. But then when you're in a relationship, this can be like, when someone is like the life of the party, but then they're not in a good mood, you really feel it. It's like you feel when a Leo is grumpy, or when a Leo is getting their ego hurt, or is in a bad mood and things haven't gone their way and they're in their head.
It's like a section of the party that has a different vibe.
And it went downhill fast. And so, I feel like in terms of communication, I could see, when someone has that light within them and it's so expressive, that when it's not there, you can really feel it. And it can, again, be turned in on itself. So like worrying about itself in that moment. And so that selflessness is something that can be helpful to cultivate in communication with Mercury and Leo.
I definitely want us to talk about this. I'm trying to remember if Freddie Mercury had Mercury and Leo, but Michael Jackson had Mercury retrograde
J-Lo.
in 25 degrees of Leo, my rising. Boom. But Michael Jackson, Mercury and Leo. And he's Virgo, so it's his ruling planet. Michael Jackson performance. It also like it wants to communicate romance. Like I feel like every song he didn't say baby, and like like it's always wanting to have this dynamic, flamboyant, almost flavor of life that wants to come out of itself. So it's like for women and men, like finding some creative outlet is almost a necessity with this Mercury. They want to taste life, they want to experience life, and so even if it has to get melodramatic to be close to it, it's like always on an edge here. But I feel like it's very clear that when one is expressing itself, Mercury and Leo is very all out. And so whatever tone it's in, angry or so, people are going to hear it. It's going to roar.
Like think about, J-Lo has this, Lindsay Lohan has this, Sandra Bullock has this, even Selena Gomez, who has a little bit more of a subdued kind of attitude. They all, I feel like it's very interesting to look at all of those people and kind of the way that they express themselves to understand the Mercury and Leo. All right, Mercury and Virgo.
Boom.
So again, Mercury loves to be in the sign of Virgo, and this is kind of where you were touching on earlier about getting someone being really good at the details. I think that these are the people who notice things. Like you notice when I got my hair cut. You notice when the picture is slightly tilted on the wall and you obsess about it.
You ironed your shirt and they got the creases in them, and you shined your shoes, or there's like some good shoes I see on your feet. I'm kidding.
Go ahead.
I really want to feel it. So Mercury, the rulership says air and earth. In the air element of Gemini, we're getting to books, data, and information. Okay, want to make sure that note is on pitch, if you will. And with like books, we want to make sure that article and that detail was written at that time. When you get to Mercury and Virgo, we're now looking at the earth of actual physical data. This is definitely like accounting. I've definitely seen Mercury and Virgo has something about putting their money away properly, maybe even penny pinching, making sure everything's organized in such a way. But this is a perspective on how they might be experiencing things. I won't lie, your digestion track is connected to how your mind is working potentially, of how you're digesting information. Just want to add that little detail. Mercury and Virgo, though, is definitely on the nitty-gritty. And sometimes the positive is being able to focus in and solve a problem in its intricacies, like, a mechanical malfunction in your car. We know exactly where to get that part, know exactly how to fix it. It also, I would personally want this Mercury healing my body, like if they were a doctor, like, because they know exactly how it's worked and functions, and is such an acuity that can be really of service because it knows exactly how it needs to be done. It's a little bit idealistic, but it really keeps that Mercury functioning on this is truth, this actually happened. I find they have a thing for movies that are like authentic personifications. Like, they used authentic things in the movie. Like, depending on the Mercury, of course, you got to look at the whole chart. But I've seen that it captivated the reality of this, and they love that.
Yeah. And I think that when I am a Virgo rising, so, don't take any of this personally. But whenever I think of Virgo, I do think of there is some desire for control. And specifically with Mercury related topics, this can have to do a lot with not just like communication environment, but projects. Like when we think about a project, I think a lot about like Mars and Mercury. And so I can see these people, for example, at work, working on a project and needing to feel like everything is done in a specific, really orderly way, or is done the right way. Like, let's not do this twice. Yep. Like, let's do it right the first time. Let's do it thoroughly. Let's do it well. And there can be this desire to kind of be in charge of that, or make sure that there's a quality control happening. So these individuals can be very exacting in everything that they do. And so they might come across this way in communication as well. Like, let's say exactly what happened and get down to the bottom of it, and not say not say more, not say less. Like, I'm pretty sure my ex had this, and we were having a conversation the other day, and we were trying to figure out kind of where our differences lied, and why things didn't work out with us, and things of that nature, and what made us good friends but not good partners. And it was like, he was able to cut with like an X-Acto knife and be like, this is how you are, and this is where things broke down, and this is how I am. And I thought I was seeing something one way, and then he was like, no, let's get more precise about exactly what was happening. And so it can be quite clever, because they're able to, again, like pinpoint things very clearly. And then for other people, it could be frustrating conversation because maybe you want, for example, as a Mercury in Cancer, you want them to connect more to the emotional concept, and they're like diagnosing the problem. And I'm like, no, but this is how I feel about the problem. And that is what matters to me. But maybe that's not what, like, the truth is more so what matters to them. And so it's a very interesting kind of, way of thinking. And I think it's extremely useful. It's very precise. It's very well done. But in matters of the heart and relationships, it might be like, just like Mercury and Gemini, a little too objective at times for some people, like me.
So much to share on this. We want to keep it brief, but we got to get thorough in this, all Mercury style. I've had bosses. I want to say there's a negative, there's a low and a high vibration to any planet in any position, even in the most benefic position, sometimes can be out of stretch, but Mercury and Virgo, you're practical, you're on cue, you look at the world reality as it is, and that's very effective to get things going. I've seen a Gemini with Mercury and Virgo. She saved a company millions of dollars by figuring out where the funnels are. You are amazing at this stuff. I won't lie though, at a low vibration for the control element, I've had a boss demonstrate to me the way he wants dishes done the right way. That was so upsetting and obscure and not actually, in my personal opinion, effective. But to them, that's what they wanted. Because as a manager, that is how this factory is going to function. And they don't care about your emotions in that circumstance. And that is where I just want to say that, like, Mercury and Virgo, we need to really get our things straight. Absolutely. Amen. Thank grace to God. But there can be enough perfection idealism that over processes and almost ingests. People are human. Let's work with them and have some functionality so we can get things on the right course. And you're gold. All right. So we got Mercury in Libra. Boom. Another Venus sign. So many things to say about Mercury in Libra. I really think and I want to do more further study on this one, but from males and females, how they communicate themselves in such a way. I know a lot of people with Mercury and Libra, and the one thing though is that they want to create peace in their environment. They are here trying to help and assist everyone around them and create peace. I have a couple of perspectives though, where sometimes Mercury and Libra is a position where we're trying to weigh out ideals to keep things beautified. And sometimes though, to keep that ideal beautified, I mean, I'm a Mercury and Venus, so I can kind of relate with this. It's a difficult position sometimes to make decisions, like, you know, to making sure that sometimes where Mercury and Aries would rather like communicate something and like chart through basically to make a really direct position. Mercury and Libra is on the total antithesis where it's like, you know, I want to actually just go with the flow. I want to relax. We're all good here. Everything's fine. In the positive light though, I see this Mercury to be someone that's like charming, sweet. I see children are softer in maybe their approach as they're like being raised. I've also seen like, you know, people have really good handwriting, or they have a certain artistry to them. I really want to encourage just children or wherever this person connects with art and communicates beauty, because there's something where they want to be in connection with a little bit, I don't want to say the word glam, but something of like just gorgeousness. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have two examples to illustrate that. So really quick, one of them is that when my brother was trying to decide, do I want to buy this property or not? And he'd been thinking about it. He's like, all right, I'm going to decide. And Mercury was in Libra. I'm like, you're going to decide when Mercury leaves Libra. You're never going to decide during this period of time.
You can't even decide on which cereal to buy. Like,
and the day that it moved out of Libra, he decided. And so I think that's a great example of this nature of really being able to see the all perspectives, sort of like Mercury and Gemini. But instead of Mercury and Gemini and their objectivity, Mercury in Libra is searching for that higher ideal, that beauty, that perfection that is not objective and is not even realistic necessarily, which can be amazing for things like art and can be amazing for things like diplomacy and creating equality in relationships. But at the end of the day, it can also be frustrating when you're like, okay, but we have this black and white decision. We have to look at the facts. We have to talk about this clearly. And it's like the Mercury in Libra individual might think some way and then not even express it, because their ideal is, well, what's not going to rock the boat? Like, what's going to make us closer? And they will hold things within in order to not destabilize. And my example of this was actually Beyonce has this placement. She's a Virgo. I believe she's a Virgo.
Yep.
She is very exacting in her nature. You can see, like, I want to perform this way. I think one thing's done this way. But I was watching this documentary with her, and she knew something about the performance that she needed to change. She could see it. She knew it wasn't going to work out well. But her Mercury in Libra, she kind of said something, and then people pushed back, and then she just dropped it.
They don't want to be pushy.
Right.
They don't want to, I'm going to disconvenience all the team, like 20 people that need to change things.
Right.
I don't want to do that.
Right. Like that would give that person anxiety. Like, even though I'm a Virgo, even though I know this is the right way, and I know this has to be done this way for me to feel satisfied, my nature is to not start an argument. I'm a Venus ruled sign. I want the relationship to be the priority. And so she ended up having to do it all over again, because she watched it back and she was like, see, I knew it. This isn't right. And then it's almost like she had to show it to everyone for them to decide and see for themselves instead of her forcing it on them. And so I think Mercury in Libra might let things like that happen. It's like, I'm going to let them come to this conclusion. I'm going to show them like the effects of this thing instead of trying to be more forceful in nature.
See, I'm an Aries moon, and so I have zero interest of projecting anything in this way. But like when Mercury in Libra does it, it almost wants other people. It might be required to have a relationship that has to push itself to make decisions, male or female, and put yourself in a position, because if it makes other people happy, let's do that. And I'm not gonna lie, this is a very charming position.
Very charming.
Very charming position. Mercury in Libra knows how to talk, knows how to, like, in a soft way, in an attractive way, and they want to look good and all that. Male or female, they want to look fresh, clean, and it. I think of Bruno Mars as Libra. But I want to just say that, like, sometimes to make decisions, I never want to say names. I want everyone's stuff is confidential. I will just share this because he won't watch this video. But my father has Mercury in Libra, and he's a Libra. We can never get him to pick where he wants to go eat ever. Because he doesn't want to, like, well, what do you want to do? Is a classic, well, what do you want to do? Like, and I can see with Beyonce, I don't really want to say this. Let me get my whole team's consciousness on the vibe that this is the way it needs to go. And there are pluses and minuses for that. Maybe the whole team's like, okay. But workability is like, sometimes Mercury in Libra, like, I don't know, I just encourage you to kind of vocalize yourself. And you're in an intellectual air sign. It's still an intelligent, I still look at all the air elements really positive for Mercury to be in. And then we want to create beauty and harmony and peace. So sometimes, like, you're really good at diffusing situations. You're really good at calming people down and, like, hey, like, right now, that's not too big of a deal. It's not too important. It's like a leaf flowing down the river. It's all good. And there are times, though, where, like, and it seems you'll put yourself on the line when it's for someone else, but when it's for you, I want to encourage you to communicate and, like, make that decision for yourself, because I just find that it might be very difficult. And so usually have a partner with some Scorpio or Aries energy that kind of like, hey, we got to do this. We got to sign the paperwork. We got to get this house. Okay. Yeah, let's do that. So
yes. So the last thing I want to say is just really trust yourself and your opinions on things, because being a relationship-oriented Mercury, your ideas can be very strongly influenced by others, and that is okay. But they're also, at the end of the day, you just want to trust your own truth above others. All right, Mercury in Scorpio, which has a very different energy.
Very different vibe.
I don't know. I always find myself extremely attracted to all Scorpios. Not like physically, but just, I don't know. I think it's that there is so much depth to them that I feel like they are not scared to look in the face of darkness, in their shadows, in danger. They're not afraid to talk about things directly. It's a traditionally Mars ruled sign, or modern Pluto ruled sign. They're willing to go deep with you in a conversation.
And tell it like it is.
And also look at themselves like it is. And sometimes that can be maybe a little bit more suspicious or pessimistic, or like not as lighthearted as Mercury can tend to be.
Right.
But it's so real, because they're truly seeing like all of the perspectives, like even the darker perspectives, which like Mercury in Libra might not want to look at.
Mercury in Scorpio, and I know so many of y'all, and I love you all so much. It's an iceberg. And underneath, there's so much more that is not what meets the eye. As the traditional ruler is Mars, we're looking at the modern ruler of Pluto. You want to get to the heart of it. You want to know the truth of it. There's something that goes on in these people's lives. So their movie will have some form of deep trauma, darkness, misleading, like something not kosher, if you want to say that, like come to the surface that they have to absolve or understand beyond. These people are great, especially in the art of manipulation or seduction. They know simple truths, but when they are ruled by a high ideal, these people have X-ray vision and they know things. They can feel on limbic level and they hit super truths. Make sure you can also hit the truth for yourself too. But with their environment, I literally sometimes can see the Scorpion. If you move a certain direction, that Scorpion, like they know how to like martial arts, if you will. It's also sometimes with the stories or the perspective, something in their life, you rule like archaeology, psychology. Like I've seen in circumstances like someone's working underground behind the scenes, of things that are going on in life. But, this Mercury, though, can make decisions. And when it does see a truth, can that's it. That's the decision. Moving on.
Like, and they're not going to sugarcoat it either. Like, it's going to be very clear.
There are other situations that can change that, like some other planets and aspects.
Of course. But in general, they're not trying to tiptoe around the truth. Like, they're just talking about the truth. They are heading directly into it. And they can be extremely passionate, extremely devoted to certain things. So like whatever house Mercury is ruling or anything related to what they are learning about, they can be all in on that thing and willing to make sacrifices to become masterful at that. And actually Kim Kardashian has this, and I know that she's studying to be a lawyer, and she has so much shit going on in her life. Like, she does not need to be a lawyer, like she has all the money in the world, but she became focused on this thing and is willing to carve out time in her crazy schedule and her life and all this to study that. It's an unusual thing. And so I feel like that shows like the Mercury and Scorpio nature, to where they can be, again, devoted and passionate about something and willing to study it or go into it and observe it at all costs. The other thing I'll say is that I do believe that Mercury and Scorpio are extremely intuitive and are really good at picking up on the weaknesses and insecurities of others. And so I will say, like, I could see these individuals, if you got into an argument with them in your relationship with them, I could definitely see them pushing on those weak spots in order to get a certain outcome, in order to get a certain emotion, to trigger a certain event, to get you to feel a certain way. It could be considered manipulation. So if you do have this sign, know that you have this power and decide to use it for good. You don't want to, you don't want to use this against your partner.
I laugh. I've said that too. I've said the exact verbatim sometimes. Use your powers for good, Mercury and Scorpio. Beyond the depths, you must use.
Yes, they can be like such powerful convincers too. Like,
it depends on the situation of what you're dealing with. I won't lie, it's a very intelligent position. I think of this as a surgeon position, but as an emotional body, their dexterity and acuity with people is unmatched. Like, at the one point though, to recognize though that you've been through certain trauma that's gotten to you to that place. You read it from other points where you've been hit, usually. And so to be comfortable in your environment, we want to have awareness with everything. So like, to make sure, to be honest, sometimes y'all just can't go so dark, because sometimes y'all just like, the mind can trip out in Pluto and just go off the deep end. And to be honest, that's, you're hurting yourself there. The one thing though, it's to know is like, don't be projecting these situations without true authenticity to yourself, because sometimes just emotions hit and Scorpio gets in the action, and this is to be aware. Tame the dragon, but like sometimes the Scorpion stings to see if you care. I want to see if that hits base, I want to see if that's where love is. And then it's like, oh, I see that. I really get that. And that's true. That's real. That's authentic. That's a raw, like citrine. Yeah, that's a raw I just can't talk. Damn it.
Citrus.
There's a raw citrine that's pure, and that's where Mercury and Scorpio will feel its depths and its roots and its intimacy way deeper. So it wants to feel intimate. I just seen that it usually can go through the antithesis to find that for itself. Another thing to add is just knowing that like when it's very tender and it's pure, you guys love to the end. It just needs to be of the truest authenticity for yourself. So you're not in a place where you're just trying to survive. And so there's a lot that this Mercury and Scorpio is going through for transformation and understanding. You have a different book. You have a deeper book. And like Courtney said, your depth, though, makes it so interesting and intimate. There's so many things that can go on for you. And like, you know, I really would advise, I want to go on a monologue, but like, you know, it's something where we need communication. We need, like, I wouldn't say necessarily therapy, but we need to talk things out and move things through so Scorpio can come in this raw, intimate, and powerful, loving, deep place. Yeah.
I'm just going to really, really quickly, because we don't know how much time, say that my brother has this placement, and I have seen this so much in him to be like suspicious of people. And it's just so typical of Scorpio. Like, there's not a very trusting nature off the bat. And so you can be like these, you know, penetrative thinkers of like, I'm going to question this person. I'm going to question what they're saying. I'm not just going to believe everything they say. And that can be really helpful, but it can also be something that kind of keeps you from vulnerability at times. And if you're just always suspicious of people, you might not see the good in them and see the good that they're trying to do. So just keep that in mind. He does have Pluto there as well, so it kind of adds more intensity to it, but that can happen. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Mercury and Sagittarius.
We've got 12 minutes to finish the rest
12
of
minutes. Let's gallop on this. So I got Mercury and Sagittarius. I left to go into it, but Mercury is detriment here. And so what I can say is now Mercury is taken to the ruler of Jupiter. I find that Mercury and Sagittarius, when it's in detriment, we are almost, I have the same Mercury as Beethoven. We almost get driven by Jupiter's big, so much energy coming through little Mercury to communicate things to people that sometimes words are not enough. Sometimes there's so many things trying to come out. I'm having 3 conversations and they can like have their foot in their mouth, blah, blah, blah. You know, like I literally couldn't, and here Mercury retrograde, I'll probably experience that more. The funny thing is though, is Beethoven was deaf and then he made music with Mercury and Sag, you know, and some of the, like these triumphant things. So we feel very Jupiterian, gregarious, big, large energy, but sometimes to articulate it, it's almost like a little like pointing to which star in the vastness of space. It's like we can't get micro sometimes. So philosophy and other things that create optimism is usually what kind of helps us find our way in calculating it. And probably me in astrology. What I can say though is that wisdom and experiencing things helps this Mercury feel alive and understood. Really wanting questions, really wanting to discover things. The only thing is Mercury and Sag might not have it all put together. Like what you said, Mercury and Virgo, we want to put all the train track pieces. We're just like, hey, I got this idea. It's going to work. It's going to work. You know, and it's like, do we have the money? Do we have the infrastructure? Now, I want to say this. Sometimes blind faith, and I say this with Mercury and Sag, people think I'm a freaking lunatic, has made me go through some of the most greatest stories of my life on the edge of a hair. And I love it. But I won't lie, I've experienced a lot of anguish in my upbringing from not being understood and being like, I really did, before I dated a Gemini that was square in everything in my chart. But like, until I really understood how important communication is with Mercury and Sag, just seeing like, oh, just say things like it doesn't, like, you know what I mean, you realize that it's so much more important to get your facts and data straight. And so for me, I felt like music or something with the fire element was a lot more ability to express myself better than English could. So this is where like Jupiter has a lot. I've seen a lot of people in Sag, like, you guys are cool. Like, you guys don't really, I don't think being in detriment means that you guys are not intelligent. I just think there's a way, how can I communicate it? And so I like compare it to Beethoven with this frustration making music, if that makes sense.
I think that was so beautifully put. I am going to only add in a negative perspective. Sorry. I love all the positive stuff.
No, I'm just kidding.
But I do think that Mercury and Sagittarius can be in an argument, in a relationship. It can be like preachy or it can be too blunt. It is a fire sign. It is.
We are blunt. We want truth.
It is
blunt.
It can be dogmatic at times, like
Idealist sometimes.
yeah, idealist. It's like, and so that can be troublesome if you're trying to have an argument, for example, or you're trying to have a discussion. It's just going to make things a little bit harder if you are sensitive. For example, Mercury in Cancer, I get real sensitive, or if you are really focused on like Mercury in Gemini on all the little facts and the data and the objectivity. The like the perspective of Sagittarius can be very devoted to what they are invested in, and because they've gained it through so much wisdom and experience, and there's all the reasons why they're invested in it, but that can be hard to tackle when you're trying to get someone on your side. And so if you can kind of find ways to meet in the middle, that's what's going to make this placement work in your relationship.
So we touch on, I know we have low time here, but like just want to share this. I've been in the position in my life, not knowingly with Mercury and Sag, that you have beliefs, and the lowest vibration that Mercury and Sag can do is projecting beliefs. So people that are highly religious or highly something and speaking like this is the only way. It's because Mercury and Sag has to do a journey to have comprehension and understanding. Mercury and Gemini might like, oh, I just read a book and I figured it all out. Mercury and Sag is like, no, I'm having a fucking pilgrimage to like comprehend something at the highest level. So when it's fucking true for us on a Jupiterial like journey, now we feel it's ultimate truth. And so that can just recognize, like in certain positions, we need to also recognize that how we're experiencing it or idealizing how we want it to be, we can't push those beliefs into the reality of what's going on. Remember, Mercury is like neutral. So I just want to say that.
Yeah.
Jupiter can get too lost in its world.
Okay, Mercury in Capricorn.
I love Mercury in Cap. You guys have wonderful handwriting. Amazing. Beautiful.
It is an earth sign, so it's going to have similar qualities to Taurus, where I think that in terms of communication, these are going to be people who are generally, again, more thoughtful with their words. They definitely are going to, like, Capricorn generally is very good at seeing how it's a Saturn ruled planet. There is this process of karma or cause and effect. And so they can see kind of how, okay, if I say this, it's going to have this reaction, or if I don't say this, it's going to have this outcome. And so I feel like there is like a sense of responsibility around the way that they talk about things or learn about things and whatnot. Like it's not something that is taken as lightly. There is like consciousness there, and effort there.
My mother has Mercury in Capricorn, even conjunct Venus. But I want to just say this is very practical. I can't say it's the most poetic position necessarily in the sign of Capricorn, but y'all are direct. You'll get things done. It's efficient. It's articulate. Sometimes like you read books in order and finish it and be like, completed that, check. Like, there's something, it's very direct in its way. So I think Mercury in Capricorn is very effective for getting stuff. I want to work with Mercury in Capricorns, but making sure your communication and what's showing up and what's going on, they need a track. And if they need help, they will ask for a track. And sometimes their intuition might not be as strong as much as like, this is practical, this creates results, let's do it.
Yeah.
And so knowing where you're kind of building blocks, putting those perfect things in queue, you always get Capricorn to a certain destination. And it's just knowing like in their ways of communication that can be a little bit more straight up, forthright. We don't need to glamorize it. Sometimes it's a little bit blunt with Saturn there too.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I was going to say that with the Saturn rule sign, there can be this feeling of judgment or criticism, because Saturn can definitely bring that eye of like, well, I know better. I have the wisdom. I have the experience. But it's not just like, oh, we all have our perspective. It's like, no, you're not doing this well. You're not doing this right. And so if this were like the
pretty rigid, you can get rigid on that.
Yeah. And if this is the lower vibration of that can come across as just maybe being like a little bit, again, like critical in conversation. So if you are kind of seeing that come out in arguments and you're like not taking low blows, but you're really pointing out like that person's flaws, or you're really like telling them kind of the reality of the situation, but in maybe rude way. I don't know. That's just something to
It
think
could be
about.
very blunt and similar action to what we were teasing with Mercury and Gemini or Virgo, but in Capricorn, something it's just kind of like it's not building, it's not working. Wake up, and sometimes that can be the case, or like, yeah. It's just wants to know. It wants to know where it's going. Come on, we need to move things forward. So,
All right, Mercury in Aquarius.
Mercury in Aquarius, the one that doesn't want to fit in at all. The one that purposely, out of defiance, will not fit in. I'm kidding. But no, I thought of Marilyn Manson immediately. Like I don't know why. But he popped up in my mind. I have great friends, a lot of people with Mercury in Aquarius. Y'all want to just do things to your own drum. I feel like if there's the traditional way of doing it from like the Capricorn Mercury side of things, like this is the traditional way that things have been done masterfully. Mercury in Aquarius is kind of, I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna do something totally different. I don't want to do that at all. That sucks. Like perspective, my thoughts.
Yeah, and because Mercury is quite like a social planet in general, it's what connects us to people. That can be what people are attracted to in you. Like, oh, the way that she talks, it's like she doesn't give a fuck. Like Rihanna has this placement. And Rihanna sometimes just doesn't give a fuck. And like Drew Barrymore, for example, like she's kind of a little bit unusual. Like everyone likes her though. She's just,
Love how you said that.
She's just a little different in her energy and her way of being. And it's what makes her so likable though. And so I think that there can be like he's saying this side to these individuals that are just unconventional in the way that they communicate, in the way that they understand life. And it's like they don't necessarily care about belonging, but it's like that is often what makes people attracted to them in the first place.
I'd like to say this, that now today there's a speculation, I don't know if I fully approve of this, but I'm almost there, is they say that Mercury could be also now known as exalted in Aquarius, being a lower, higher ruler of Uranus. Just throwing that there. But like, so these people definitely, I think you have a lot of intelligence. Sometimes they're well read. In Saturn ruled sign though, in Aquarius, though, it's just working and operating on a different level. I just find that like you really beat to your own drum, and that they're like, if there's traditional ways of doing things, they're not really wanting to be fundamentally responded to. Mercury in Aquarius is like trying to be the new inventor and really doing something no one's ever done before, or just not trying to do whatever. It's a mix. It's very like, you could say progressive, or just like very out of the box, so to speak. I find though that really good to communicate, there won't ever really be bored. Like boredom can almost like kill, like, I'm kidding. But like Mercury in Aquarius needs excitement and tenacity, or it's just kind of like, this is lame, I'm leaving, like, and there's just a lot of that to add to the mix. So I love it though. Very intelligent position.
So really quick before we go into Mercury and Pisces, I do want to talk about like how that can affect relationships in particular. Mm-hmm. So how would you think that Mercury in Aquarius how does that play out in a dynamic, do you think?
Man, there's so many things to share, and I'm trying to say it neutrally. Mercury in Aquarius, though, definitely wants to have its independence. It wants to have its awareness. It wants to be around intellectual understanding. I've never seen a Mercury in Aquarius that wasn't well read, or they studied something rigorously. Within a relationship, though, is letting that person have their freedom. Like, they have to just, if you got to let them have their freedom, and you can't like coddle them. The only thing is just to know is you have a tendency to escape and run out when it's time to connect Mercury in Aquarius. And I can say that for 5+ individuals at the top of my head, is like, hey, this really needs to be addressed, or there's a situation we're trying to talk about. It's very easy for you to like, nope, later, peace out, bye. Like, don't want to address that today. And that's male or female. And so knowing that situation is effective in its place for you being unique, but knowing where you can come and interact with people and address situations really can liberate you to find connection. I think of this, if Leo is the heart, Aquarius is the rays of the heart that get emitted amongst other people around you. Remember that, because a lot of your perspective is sharing that with the world.
I love that. All right, let's wrap up with Mercury in Pisces. So,
Gosh,
again, Mercury doesn't really enjoy being in this
it's
sign.
my secret favorite position of Mercury.
Is it?
In a way.
I
Yeah.
have seen the good and bad of this.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, I think it's these people are extremely creative. I see a lot of people who have like written books or who have like artistic endeavors that they take on. These are people who are likely good at like abstract thought, things that are harder to quantify, spiritual topics, energetic themes, things like that nature. But when it comes to really grasping something, really expressing something in the logical way, this is where Pisces starts to veer off into like imagination land. And that's why it is in fall in this sign. That's why it's essentially it's struggling to grasp. Like Pisces is like clouds. Mercury wants like the tangible reality, and it's just like the clouds are just seeping through your fingertips, essentially.
I'm like having a huge download for this, but like Mercury is considered fall. And I know that we can say it's detriment for Sag and Pisces, but I've heard that fall position would be for Mercury here in Pisces, because now we are literally emitting from conscious communications of the soul and through dreams and unexplainable places. If you can imagine the water droplets in Jurassic Park that are shaking, the ripples of things emitted in your environment that are touching you and talking to you and speaking to you very intimately, this is where Mercury in Pisces takes you on a magical portal ride. You want to just make sure that you're getting your facts and data straight. This is where, like, I've had some of the most magical experiences of my life with Mercury in Pisces. And I want to share this to all viewers out here. Is I had a little amethyst, purple stone, and I just knew it was crown chakra, and I knew it was like, follow the purple flowers. And I found a little purple flower that led to more purple flowers that led to a bushel, to eventually I found myself into a whole canopy of purple trees with deer and a giant diamond rock in the middle that just seemed like out of a fairy tale video game. And to me, and people I met in dreams that I had a dream. I met this girl with short red hair and an orange shirt. And I bumped into that person when Mercury entered into Pisces. And it was stuff that I don't know how to tell people. It blew and tripped me out. And my experience was an emotional ripple effect that was touching my soul. But if I wrote it on paper, it's almost like you could never understand. This was so intimate to me that I don't know how it can receive you. So it's like, it's almost, and I say this about Pisces energy, and I'll say it again, it's the energy unexplainable by God. From the ruler of Jupiter into Neptune, this is a very interesting Pisces. I will say, similar to Scorpio, there's an antithesis, and I know you got to go, but like, that we look at, I went through some form of chaos or some misunderstanding where I got lost at one point in my life. This is where Mercury and Pisces somehow washes upon us the new opportunities to find ourselves. And I will just say, Tony Robbins as Mercury and Pisces on his South Node. And I think he's a fantastic communicator. In fact, arguably the best communicator. But I know what he does to one level. He reads your body language. He reads how your body's saying the truth versus the words and facts and data and other things.
Yeah. And I will say it's likely that many people with Mercury and Pisces sometimes feel that they struggle with the words because the experience and the emotion is so deep that the words, like you're saying, can't quite capture it. So even though Tony Robbins might be this incredible speaker, I bet you there is some feeling that there is more to the story. There's more to share that I can never quite convey. And it's because their experience and their perception of life is so rich. So we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you guys so much for staying tuned. And I hope that you guys have a beautiful day. Don't forget to check out Ricky.
Take care. Thank you.
I will link his channel down below. You can book readings with either of us. And I hope that you have a beautiful day.
You can catch my YouTube, The Infinite Soul. We got to go. Peace out. Much love.
Bye.